In this video lesson, I'm going to show you how to properly format your essay for an academic class. Formatting has to do with how your words look. What does the essay actually look like on the surface? And so I'm going to go through some steps to show you how to properly format. But the first thing I want to point out is the version of Microsoft Word that I'm using. So I'm using Microsoft Word for Mac, and I'm using version 16. So if you have a Windows computer, or if you're using a different version of Microsoft Word, like version 15, 14, something like that, then your screen will look a little different from mine, and some of the steps may be done slightly differently in your version. However, it should still be very similar. And you probably, with a little bit of exploration, you should be able to follow my steps and do all of these formatting steps. So let's get started. And the next thing I'll point out is that most of these steps we will be here in the home menu. There's a lot of different menus within Microsoft Word, but most of the formatting of the words themselves happen here on the home menu. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'll show you, I've got this, what I have here is I have a title and I have an introduction paragraph. And so if I want to start changing the look, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of my words because the formatting will not change unless you actually highlight the words themselves. And so the first thing we need to look at is the font. So the font means the shape of the letters. And the font determines how the words will look on the page. So right now, if I come up here, you've got a menu of different fonts. And if I click, you'll see that there are many, many, many different fonts. There's dozens of fonts within Microsoft Word, maybe even hundreds, I'm not quite sure. And some of them, you guys, are really cool and really fun to play with. Let's check out Curls MT. Ooh, look at that. Now, look at how beautiful my essay looks. And in fact, this looks just like the Rainbow Magic fairy books that my son and my daughter really love to read. But the thing is, this is not a Rainbow Magic fairy book that I'm writing here. This is an academic essay for a university class. So this is not how my essay should look. There are basically three fonts that most professors consider acceptable or that they might even ask for specifically. The first one is Calibri, and Calibri is the automatic font that Microsoft Word uses. So for most of the time, if you don't change the font, you'll be fine. It'll probably be in Calibri, and your essay will look fine. Another one that's common that professors either request or accept is Arial. Looks very similar to Calibri. And the last one is Times New Roman, which again is very common. And I'm going to make this one Times New Roman. But you'll notice these three fonts they're boring. There's nothing really special about them. They look very, very standard. And that is on purpose. You want your words to look boring. You don't want people to really notice the words themselves and how they look. And the reason for that is what should really stand out to your professor. What your professor should really notice is not the shape of the words and how the words look on the page. What you want your professors to really notice is the ideas in those words and the ideas you're communicating. So you want your words to look boring, but you want the ideas in them to be very interesting and to grab people's attention. So now we have Times New Roman as the font for our words. And next we need to look at the size of these words. You may notice that they're actually pretty small right now. They're smaller than we want them to be. And if we go up right next to the list of fonts, is a list of possible sizes. So if I click on this, you'll see that right now I'm at 10.5, and that's a little too small. The standard size is 12, looking like that. Some students will try to be a little sneaky, And they'll try to say, oh, I have to get to 5 pages. I'm going to go to 14 size font. And I'm going to try that. And then I'll get to my 5 pages faster. So this is the thing. It's really obvious. When professors read essays all day long, we notice right away when an essay is in size 14 font. So, don't try to pull this fast one because it just makes professors angry. So 12 size font is what it should look like, just like that. And that's the proper size. Most of the time, if your professor does not state a specific size, make it 12 point. 12 point is the standard font size. Next, we need to look at the spacing, the line spacing here. So what you'll notice is between my lines, like right here, there's very little space. There's almost no white space between each line of text. And for some people, that can make it a little bit difficult to read. And so what's expected is double spacing. And so if you come up here, what you'll notice right here, there's this little option here, line and paragraph spacing. And you'll notice it looks like lines of text with arrows up and down, indicating this, the amount of space between lines. So if you click on that, we're at 1.0, which means we're at single spacing. But what most professors want is double spacing. So if you click 2.0, now you'll notice there's a lot of space between each line. It's a little bit easier to read. And the good news is if your professor says 5 pages, then you've gotten to that 5 pages. You'll get there twice as fast by double spacing. So that's good news for everybody. So now my paragraph is mostly the way that it should look. But so we have the title here. And so right now it's a little bit difficult to tell what part is the title and what part is the paragraph. So we want to do a couple of things to make sure that that title stands out. And the first thing is we want to move it from the left side over here into the center. Right now we see that the title is it is left aligned or aligned left. And you'll notice on the paragraph, there's a straight line down the left side, which is standard. And Microsoft Word, as long as your version of Microsoft Word is in English, then this will be automatic. There'll be a straight line down the left side. On the right side, you'll notice there's a little bit of a wavy line. And that's fine. This is actually what's usually expected for a student essay. Straight line on the left, wavy line on the right in the paragraphs. However, in the title, we want to move that to the center. And so right next to the Align Left option here, you'll see Center Text. So if I click on that, it automatically moves this title directly into the center. And this is the only basic required thing that you should do with your title is put it in the center. But there's a couple more things you could do if you want your title to stand out. Some people will make their title bold. And up here, just below font, you'll see this option as a B for bold. And if I click on that, watch what happens to the title. You'll notice now the letters are thicker, they're darker, and they're much easier to notice. Some people will also underline their title. So there's a U right here. You can click on that, and your title will be underlined. And so making your title bold and underlined is optional, but a lot of people will prefer to do that so that their title really stands out. So now you can see, it's very easy to see which part's the title and which part is the essay itself. Next, there's just a couple more things we need to polish up, and then we'll have a good looking essay. The first thing is indentation. The first line of each paragraph needs to be indented, which means instead of being on this part of this straight line along the left, the first line should be pushed in a little bit, like a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch or something like that. And so first I will show you a mistake that a lot of students make. They use the space bar. Just like they would, to make a space between two words, they'll use a space bar to create a space here. And they'll hit space maybe 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So it looks good, actually, and it looks the way it's supposed to look. But the reason that it's a mistake is because you're actually making your life a little bit more difficult when you do it this way. So I'm going to delete those spaces that I created with the spacebar. And instead, I'm going to push the Tab button. Tab, T-A-B. It's on the left side of your keyboard, right next to the Q button. So I push that tab, and you see what it does is it automatically creates a space for me. And it's the correct size that's expected, and I only had to push one button. And there's one other little trick. So this is the thing, Microsoft Word has a lot of little tricks to make formatting easier and more automatic for you. So I'm going to show you one more time, hitting the Tab button, and I want you to pay attention to something a little bit different. So I want you to pay attention up here, where the ruler is at the top of the screen. So I'm going to keep circling, and I'm going to push the Tab button. 1, 2, 3. See what happened here with this little arrow? So you'll notice that this arrow moved over about 1/4 of an inch or so. And so I'll show you what this means. So I've got my nice indentation on the first line of my first paragraph. And when I get to the end of my first paragraph and I want to start my next paragraph, I will hit the return button or the enter button, which is on the right side of the keyboard. And notice what happens when I start my typing. So automatically, I have this indentation right here because Microsoft Word has automatically set it so that the first line of each paragraph will be indented. But then you'll notice the next lines in the paragraph, they follow this nice straight left alignment. And so by using the Tab button instead of the space bar, you make your life a little bit easier by telling Microsoft Word how you want your essay to be formatted. And now every paragraph will be consistent and it will look really nice when you're finished. And it'll be easier. It will save you a lot of time. So the Tab button is a very helpful way to do the indentation. And there is one last thing that we're going to do here. And that is the margins. The amount of white space that's here on the left and on the right. And also the amount of white space that's at the top and at the bottom. And so there's some professors will tell you exactly what size margins they prefer, but even if they don't, there's a standard size that most professors expect. And so to adjust the margins, you have to leave the home menu. You have to come over here to the layout menu. And on the far left, you'll see this option for margins, to adjust the margins. So if I click on this, there are some different options, and you just want to pick normal. And you'll notice normal is 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. So professors will usually say 1 inch margins. So if I click that, now you'll see we've got about 1 inch here, about 1 inch down to the title. And this is the amount of white space that a professor expects to see on the page. And so now what we have is a really nice looking, properly formatted academic essay. And I'm gonna quickly review the different things that we've done, and I'm gonna add a couple of notes here so that we can remember. So the first thing that we're looking at, and I'm gonna so in the review menu I can add comments. So the first thing we were looking at is the font, which is Times New Roman. The next thing that we're looking at is the font size. 12 points is what we call that. The next thing we're looking at here, I'll highlight a couple of lines so we can see, is the spacing. We say it is double spaced. The next thing is for the title. It is centered. Bold and underlined are optional. And then we're looking at the indentation. Use the Tab button, not the space bar. And then the final thing we're looking at is the margins, I'll add a note on the left there. Normal margins, which are 1 inch on each side. And so, when you're finished, this is how your essay will look. And you will notice, let me show you just a moment again without all these notes. So what you'll notice is that this essay, it looks very boring, it looks very normal, it looks very standard. If your essay looks like this, it will probably look like every other essay that your professor reads. And that is good news. Because remember that when your professor reads your essay, what you want them to notice is not how cool your essay looks. You don't want them to notice the shape of the words or how pretty your essay looks on a piece of paper. What you want them to really notice are the ideas within your words. And the ideas are what's important. And as long as your formatting is the same as everybody else's, then it is your ideas that will come through and not how pretty the words themselves look.